Delia had worked 11 years at Harrogate Lodge and prided herself on knowing, within a week, which residents mattered to powerful families and which ones had been placed there to be forgotten. Edna Voss had arrived in February with a private room, a standing flower arrangement renewed each Monday, and a cousin named Rowan, who arrived every fortnight smelling of good cologne and stayed exactly 20 minutes. Delia had her pegged by the end of the first week. The flowers were for appearance. The cousin was keeping score. Delia had not expected was Nora. Nora was the youngest aide on the East Wing, 24, quiet, easy to overlook in a corridor. The sort of woman who refilled your water glass before you noticed it was empty and was gone before you thought to say thank you. She had been passed over for the senior aide post twice. She did not seem to carry a grudge about it. She did her rounds. She did them well, 3 evenings a week. Always after her shift ended, always without logging the time. She could be found in Edna Voss's room, sitting in the chair beside the window, listening. Delia had noticed it by March. She had said nothing. There was no rule against it, and something in the quality of Edna's sleep on those evenings. Quieter, more settled. The small frown she wore through most of the day gone smooth, made Delia disinclined to interfere. Rowan Voss had noticed it too, and he had taken a different view. Mrs. Voss is to have her evening routine kept to 45 minutes. He had told the floor manager in April, the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to being obeyed. She finds extended company tiring. The aide, the young one, is not to linger. He had smiled when he said it. The floor manager had nodded and passed the instruction along. Nora had received the instruction, acknowledged it, and continued to sit with Edna 3 evenings a week. She had simply stopped signing out at the front desk until she was sure the East Wing corridor was empty. Delia had watched all of this and kept her own counsel. She had been at Harrogate Lodge long enough to know that some battles were not hers to pick, and some people were worth protecting quietly until the moment came to do it loudly. The moment arrived on a Thursday in June, in the form of a black car in the car park that none of the staff recognized. Callum Voss was not what Delia had imagined. She had built a picture in her mind from the whispers she'd heard. The name Voss carried a particular weight in the city, particular stillness that entered a room before the man himself did. And she had expected something louder. Came through the front door was a man in his early 40s, broad across the shoulders, dark-suited, moving with the unhurried certainty of someone who had never once needed to raise his voice to be heard. He did not announce himself at reception. He did not need to. The receptionist went pale and reached for the phone, and he was already past her, already asking a passing orderly which wing housed his mother. Delia met him in the East Corridor. "Mr. Voss." She kept her voice level. "I'm the senior nurse on this wing. I can take you to her." He studied her for a moment, not unkindly, but with the particular attention of a man who had spent a long time reading people quickly. "How is she?" he said. It was not quite a question. Delia chose her words. "She is stable. She is comfortable." She paused. "There are some things you should know before you see her, if you have a few minutes." Something shifted in his expression, not alarm, but a careful attention, like a man recalibrating. "Tell me," he said. She told him. Not everything, not yet, but the shape of it, the instruction to limit evening company. Quiet change to Edna's care schedule in the weeks after Rowan's last visit. The medication review that had been requested, by letter, someone other than Edna's named physician. She had kept a log. She told him that too. Callum Voss stood very still through all of it. Stillness was not the stillness of shock. It was the stillness of a man arranging what he already suspected into the order it had always belonged. "The aide," he said. "The young one who stays late." Delia looked at him. "Nora. She's been sitting with my mother despite the instruction." "Yes." He said nothing for a moment. Then, "Where is she now?" Rowan arrived 20 minutes later, having been called, Delia suspected, by someone on the administrative staff who thought it prudent to warn him. He came in smiling, unhurried, already composing the version of events he intended to offer. He was good at that. Delia had watched him do it before. He did not get the chance. Callum met him in the small conference room off the main hall, and Delia was not present for what passed between them. She did not need to be. She heard nothing through the walls, no raised voices, no sharp words, and that told her more than shouting would have. When Rowan came out, 15 minutes later, the smile was gone. He did not look at the staff. He did not stop at reception. He walked to his car and he drove away, and Delia understood, from the set of his shoulders, that he would not be coming back. She learned later, through the careful inquiries of a man she trusted, that Rowan Voss had been removed from the family's business affairs by the end of the following week. No explanation was given publicly, none was needed. Callum was with his mother for a long time. Delia checked in once, gently, around 4 o'clock, and found Edna awake and sitting up straighter than she had in weeks, her hand in her son's, talking in the low, easy way of someone who has been allowed to simply be herself. Callum sat beside her with the patient stillness of a man with nowhere else in the world he needed to be. Delia withdrew without a word and closed the door. Nora arrived at 5:10. She did not know about the car in the car park. She had finished her shift, changed out of her uniform into a plain coat, and come back in through the side entrance the way she always did, carrying 2 cups of tea from the kitchen, one for Edna, one for herself, because she had found that Edna liked company more than she liked being waited on. She had her key card in her hand and her eyes on the corridor, and she nearly walked into Callum Voss in the doorway. She stopped. The cups steadied. She looked up at him. At the dark suit, the careful face, the set of a man who filled a doorframe without seeming to try, and something in her. Expression registered recognition, then a quick, private composure. She did not step back. "You must be her son," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. Behind him, through the open door, Edna's voice drifted. "Nora? Is that Nora? Tell her to come in, Callum. She always brings the good tea." Something in his face changed then. It was not a large change. A man like Callum Voss did not wear his interior. Life where the room could read it. But Delia, watching from the nurse's station at the end of the corridor, saw it. The set of his jaw eased. The careful stillness became something else, something quieter and less defended. The way a room feels after a long-held breath is finally let go. He stepped aside to let Nora through. She carried both cups in, set one on Edna's table, settled into the chair at the window with the ease of long habit, and said something low that made Edna laugh. A real laugh, full and unguarded, the kind Delia had not heard from that room in months. Callum stood in the doorway and watched his mother laugh, and Delia, at the end of the corridor, watched him. She would not have called herself a sentimental woman. 11 years in care work tended to press sentiment into a more durable shape, something closer to clear-eyed attention, to knowing what mattered and what didn't. But she felt the weight of it standing there. The most feared name in the city, and the woman who hadn't known to be afraid of it. The mother who had been placed out of sight, and the aide who had refused to look away. The room full of ordinary warmth that power by itself had not managed to provide. He found Delia at the nurse's station before he left. "Log," he said, "the one you mentioned. I'd like a copy for my records if she consents." "I'll ask her," Delia said. He nodded. Then, after a pause, and it was, she thought, the pause of a man choosing his words or carefully, which was different from a man who didn't care. "How long has she been doing this? Staying late?" "Since March," Delia said. He was quiet for a moment. "Has anyone thanked her for it?" Delia thought about that. "I don't believe so, no." He looked back down the corridor toward his mother's room, where the low sound of Edna's voice was still audible, still easy. Then he looked at Delia with the direct, undecorated attention that she imagined made most people want to look away. She held it. "I'll be back Saturday," he said. It was not quite an announcement. It was something more deliberate than that. He left. Delia listened to his footsteps cross the lobby and heard the front door close. And then she sat down at the station and wrote up her notes for the evening, taking more care than usual with the wording. She was still there when Nora came out of Edna's room an hour later, coat back on, both cups empty on the tray. Nora paused at the station, a little uncertain, the way she always looked when she suspected she might have overstepped. "Did I? Was it all right?" Nora asked. "That I came in while he was here." Delia looked at her. This quiet young woman who had sat in that chair through March and April and May and into June, off the clock, unasked, because an old woman was lonely and it was the decent thing to do. "He asked how long you'd been coming," Delia said. Nora blinked. "What did you tell him? The truth?" Delia picked up her pen. "He'll be back Saturday." Nora was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. Once in the plain way of someone who has learned not to expect much, and is trying not to let hope make a fool of her. "All right," she said, and gathered her things and went home. Delia finished her notes. Outside, the last of the June light was leaving the stone walls of Harrogate Lodge, going gold and then gray. Down the corridor, Edna Voss was asleep, really asleep, the good kind, and somewhere in the city, Delia suspected, the most feared man in it was sitting very quietly, with a feeling he did not yet have a name for. She had been a nurse long enough to recognize it anyway. It looked, she thought, a great deal like the beginning of something true.